introduction, and we're
That's
good.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting for a workshop session to order. And without any further ado or delay, we'll ask Karen to present. And first introduce yourself so that the video can catch that.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Jamie, for this time today. I'm Karen Groh, President and CEO at the Lebanon Valley Chamber of Commerce. And I greatly appreciate you allowing me to come in today to talk about something that I feel is really important to the county and may have an impact in many different ways. And so, if you're all right, I'll proceed with going through this. So this is not a new concept, talking about an advanced training center. You each have a handout with you. This is something that's been talked about, some kind of a skills training center, advanced training center for many, many years, including back in the 60s when the Chamber of Commerce had a manufacturers council who came up with comments that said that in 1960, there's a considerable unskilled labor in the area. They are all in agreement as to the need for an area technical school to better serve the needs of a large percentage of students who will never go to college. And so at that time, I think that out of that manufacturers council, along with other work in the community, the CTC, the Lebanon County Career and Technology Center, was created. But here we are. The CTC has right now 16 out of 23 of their programs at capacity. They don't really have the space within the building to add additional programs. And so we kind of have a need for stepping up our game, getting to the next phase. And so the idea behind that is to have some kind of an advanced training center, whether it's advanced manufacturing, advanced skills, whatever you want to call it. And it would really have a tremendous impact in skills training, increasing wages to a presently unskilled or undereducated labor force. It will boost the local economy, and it'll benefit regional employers. Now, I'm not, behind enough to think that this is the be-all and end-all of everything, but I do think that this perhaps could shift the needle a little bit in how our county is seen and how this can impact our county in many different levels, including students having greater access to post-secondary options once they graduate from high school, including an unskilled adult labor force who may want to go back and get some additional training. Certainly employers in the area would have great benefit by having a better skilled force coming into their facilities already trained. And then overall for Lebanon County, there could be tremendous impacts, including opportunities to students from surrounding areas, replacing the growth of lower wage distribution centers and warehouse jobs with technology-driven industries, and for the next page, providing corporate tax growth and increased wages having many beneficial effects, including lower dependence on social services and with an increase in disposable income, a benefit to the local economy. Lebanon County's median household income is lower than that of the United States, Pennsylvania, and many surrounding counties. So we have a little bit of work that I think we can do to try and bridge that gap. You'll see that on this particular page, we have a quote from Commissioner Ames, who has had many years of experience in the CTC industry, previously known as the VOTEC industry, and certainly believes that this might be something very beneficial to the community. Any questions yet?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things, there's a little bit of data in your presentation that I think kind of highlights our need in the area. And one of that is educational attainment. Lebanon County residents have lower educational attainment levels compared to the region and the state, with fewer individuals having attended or graduated from higher education programs. Additionally, there are also differences in educational attainment by race and ethnicity. And this may play a factor as we apply for grants down the road, because many of the grants also want to address inadequacies in minority groups. I know there's a lot of stuff in here to read. There's a quote from Tom Harlow from WellSpan, but you can take this with you, and I don't want to bore you by reading through everything. One of the things that I think is really exciting about this is the idea of bringing in not just the standard carpentry, masonry, electrician, et cetera, like on a different level, the next step from the CTC, but let's bring in advanced programs. let's talk about robotics and aerospace and biochemistry and the things that might get some of our high school graduating students to stay in the area because there's a program that's really appealing to them. Let's give them the skills so that they graduate and we may be able to attract other businesses to the area knowing that we have graduates with specific skill sets to meet their needs. And I think we can hopefully provide skill sets that will give them the opportunity for a higher paying job right out of graduation and hopefully keep them in the area. So there's a lot of different programs here. These are just some of the ones that I've pulled from other training centers throughout the country. And you'll see that there's some quotes from local businesses who are in great favor of this. So the idea of this is, where on earth do you house this? We have a proposed location at the existing Career and Technology Center in Lebanon County. They have 50 acres of land. They currently have their building is 150,000 square feet. And we are proposing that we could easily build another building between 30 and 100,000 square feet on that property that already exists. Now, I've had conversations with Glenn Meck, the administrator at the CTC. He and his board are in great favor of continuing discussions about this. I think it complements nicely the fact that the CTC is seen as a technical school, technical training school. You could then take students there and encourage them to go to the next step to an advanced training center. Additionally, if that particular property doesn't work out, there are other tracts of land, but it does complicate the issue to have to think about purchasing land somewhere for this.
And would these be to take the pressure off the programs that are at capacity, or would they be for some of these additional offerings that you cite in that list that may not be now available?
I think it could be both. So I think that some of the programs that are at capacity, you could have a secondary option for them. You could. One of the things that I find is frustrating is that the CTC has the opportunity to do adult training. But when their programs are at capacity, there's nowhere to put those adults in there. And therefore, our adult population that's unskilled can't get ahead on those things. So this would provide perhaps additional space. I think that they would probably have to go through the CTC first. But this would be the next step. So they could take somebody who graduates from the CTC, perhaps in welding or somewhere else, and take them to the next level of expertise. So you could have definitely an overlap of your basic programs and also advanced technologies. Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So moving on, I've also spoken to HAC, and I'll go through some of the conversations that I've had, but partners. So most of these I have spoken with, but I think that this should be a partnership. This is not a standalone building that is solely run by the CTC. It is not a standalone solely run by Harrisburg Area Community College. It is its own entity and becomes its own governance. But it would be a partnership with HAC, with Thaddeus Stevens, with Lebanon Valley College, and with the Lebanon County Career and Technology Center. The only one on that list that I haven't had a personal conversation with is Thaddeus Stevens, so I don't want to make any conversations or presumptions that they're in on this. I'm working to have that conversation.
I have
Yeah.
excuse me for interrupting.
Oh, please.
But a light just went on.
Okay.
You know, the Hershey Trust and the Milton Hershey School are challenged all the time.
How to spend their money,
How
right?
to spend their money, yeah. And I'm not saying that but it might be if you involve Milton Hershey kids.
Absolutely, that's a really, really
It's a
good point.
real source of money.
Yes, yeah, and Bill, sorry, Commissioner, that's exactly
No,
why.
I'm Bill.
I know. Why I'm in here today is to get additional input so that I know other places that I can go to. I have a list of some resources, but if I can expand on that list, I have a greater chance of success of having this happen. Joan?
Well, I was trying to figure out who the partners should be, and I guess I don't see the Builders Association listed there.
Well, the partners at the moment are those who would be providing the education. And so the Builders Association is a membership organization. It would be kind of like listing the chamber on there as a partner. We wouldn't be running it or providing the programming. We would just, I'm along for the ride on this. This has been discussed by many different entities. I'm just the current face in front of it. And so I think if you look at that list, that is the list of organizations that would be able to provide the education resources.
And because when I had heard this proposal in the past, it was Dixon, and it was HAC, and it was the Builders Association that wanted to come together for that.
Yeah, and I think you're on the right track with that, is that we would have many other entities that may come together to help this come to fruition. But the actual day-to-day operations of it, the delivery of goods, the delivery of services would come from educators. But I do believe we're just at that beginning stages, and so having many partners at the table to discuss this and see how to develop it could definitely include the Builders Association. Yeah. Is that kind of where you're thinking, or did I miss?
Well, we're using different terms,
Okay.
but I hear what you're saying.
Okay, thank you. So again, this is just theoretical, so the sustainability on this would be that once the facility is built and running, that the CTC would cover moderate overhead costs, and in return would receive lease income from the partners utilizing the space. So what I see is a space available for programs. Let's just say that Harrisburg Area Community College comes in and they want 2 classrooms to run programs. They then collect tuition to run those programs from their students. They pay a portion of that to the CTC for the space that they're utilizing. It would then still be overseen by an administration, a board of directors under its own name and entity that would be made up of individuals from each of the educational institutions as well as regional employers who may drive the conversation as well. So partners receive tuition and fees for programs, investment from regional employers potentially. They may put money in to develop specified training programs around their needs and equipment as well. It has been discussed before. I think there are some employers that would welcome that opportunity to provide some equipment and then have a curriculum designed so the graduates have a job at their facility and are already trained on their equipment.
Germany, how that's a model.
Yeah.
So is this accredited, or why wouldn't businesses be part of the education if they're also providing the equipment? They have probably trainers on their own site, but this would be an ability to maybe pull in more, or, a quieter, more professional environment. So are all I guess the question is it proposed that all of the educators are from the colleges and accredited schools, or can they also be from businesses?
At this time, I don't really know. I think that would come out of a study to determine what's the best model for this. My assumption was that these would be classes taught by accredited professors with supplemental schooling that might give them some kind of a degree when they finish. But if you're putting in the details about what a local employer might want, I don't know how that might pan out. So I think there's a lot of things that we can explore regarding that to see what different models could be used and just how can we get the most success out of it. And it might be a hybrid model of some non-credited teaching that goes directly to an apprenticeship program at a local business, where others might walk away with some certifications and degrees.
There's a lot of clamoring for this. It's really, there's so much energy in so many areas that would get behind this. But I think Bill that's the mother lode right there.
It is.
And for the first time, they're stepping out of Dauphin County to go across the state with childcare.
Yes.
$300 and some million experiment.
I know.
Because they have so much underspent their obligation because they're running out of places to spend it. So it's an awesome problem, but it could work for a county like ours, or that they're right next door to, be a center for the state for something bigger than 50,000 square feet or whatever you're, or 30 to 100,000 square feet, you know, it could really be. And I think HAC would be a good partner in something like that, as you've said there, and already talked to them. So, yeah, I think that.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid area to go look at and see what the possibilities are.
What would the capacity for students be in that particular building?
I don't know yet. This is really very in its infancy, so this is kind of from my head in my readings, and looking at other facilities that are already built or being proposed, which is why there's a lot of vague information in here. I don't have all the answers. I mean, to have a size difference between 50 and 100,000 square feet and a cost difference between 10 and 30 million, it's just because I'm just basing it on the research that I've done so far. So, and I'll kind of get to what I think the next steps are, but the number of students that we might be able to impact is kind of up in the air with the kind of programming and how many students you could have in each program.
And so, you're so talented and obviously have a very prestigious position with the chamber, but who else has been pushing this, that you pulled it all together?
Well, as of late, nobody. It kind of fell by the wayside for a while. Representative Frank Ryan was pushing for quite a while. In the past, he had some ability perhaps with state funds to push something forward a little bit. I know that Susan Everly with the Lebanon Valley Economic Development Corporation was working on some initiatives with it and tied into the IU-13.
And the Dixon Foundation has had discussions with FOTEC, or the CTC, about robotics and some other things. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I know this is, and conversations with the academia have been ongoing. So
Yes.
they're looking for a project and a site, and, you know,
Yeah.
time is so right for it.
And you're absolutely spot on with that, Bob, because I think there's so much talk about workforce right now and skills and our need for workforce. And Lebanon County is lagging behind in some areas that I think now is the time to kind of strike. All I've done is pull together some of the previous work and momentum. Again, I'm just the carrier for it right now. I'm not, there's no great benefit to the chamber in any way, other than the fact that if we can help assist to get this to some fruition, it will ultimately help the businesses in our area. So the proposed cost, yes, I'm winging it on this. I have 10 to 30 million, and that came from me looking at other sites in the country. I looked at what they were asking for in money, those who were in the proposal state, and I looked for some who had already developed and had their facilities up. It is by no means a scientific number in any way. It is, I saw them from 7.5 million for an existing building that was built out to 33 million. So it really depends on a lot of different factors that would come out with a feasibility study. So I know it's a really vague number.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Just one comment on that price, or on that estimate, is it also depends on the programs, because
Correct.
the equipment for some of those programs is gonna be just as costly as the building that it's gonna be, that could be housed in.
Yes.
So that all depends. That wasn't my question. I was thinking, you mentioned early on, 16 of the 23 programs are at capacity. Maybe this is a better question for Glenn Mack, I don't know, but are they in a constant process of reviewing their programs to see if some of them are maybe, okay, that's yesterday's trade, that, you know, and that's the reason it's not filling up, and is there anything in motion right now to evolve those classes that could be potentially like a prime the pump for this, that it would be leading to some of the trades that you listed there? Do you know if they're in the process of that, or are they, I don't know. I don't really
I'm
know.
thinking if they're 16 out of 23 are at capacity, they're not gonna be looking for too much more audience to come in, you know, until
Yeah.
they get.
But the other 7 that aren't at capacity, are they at 80%, or are they,
Yeah.
there's just no
Yeah.
interest in
And
it?
what's the waiting list for the capacity ones?
Yeah.
you know?
Sometimes it's double. I mean, in some of the
Wow.
nursing
Wow.
programs, sometimes it's double,
Oh,
yes.
that's sad.
It is
because
sad.
that nursing is so vital as we age.
Yes. So to your point, I think they do regular evaluations on their programs and they rotate out those that don't have enough attendance on a regular basis. And they do look for updates to programs that they have. I know that they have started to include robotics. So I think your point on, will this become, will they adapt some of their programming to prepare students for the next stage? Is that what you're thinking?
Or is there, I don't know, I guess is there an opportunity to work hand in hand to transition maybe some of the changes they're making into even a larger program?
Yeah.
Just lead it in.
I think absolutely. I think the CTC is definitely on board with this concept. And I think that those conversations should definitely happen to make sure that there's a unity between the two programs, that there's not a duplication of anything, that one builds on the other.
They also, I think one of the challenges that I'm aware of they face is instructors. Because in some of these trades, you can make a lot more money
Than you can
in the
as a teacher.
trade than you
Yeah.
can as a teacher in the trade. Maybe
Yes.
twice as much money in the
Absolutely.
trade. And so, to pull somebody off of the trade to say, hey, why don't you come on in here to this air-conditioned classroom and we'll pay you half of what you're making out there.
Yeah, except as you get older, you might
Yeah.
not want to be in those
Right,
conditions doing
right.
some of that hard labor. But you're right,
That
that
is
is
a
true.
I think they're, I don't remember who was their welding, I think their welding and their diesel mechanic class both suffered from that for a while,
Mhm.
finding instructors.
Yeah, it's like everything else, they're definitely struggling with that.
Well, I happen to know someone who actually taught their Cisco networking, telecommunications, very highly advanced programs. And the cost for those programs was pretty salty. And ultimately, that was the reason the program was dropped, not because of enrollment. And the students who were hired from that class went to NASA and in the military and different places like that. So I guess that's one thing that should be part of your study is what do the programs cost that are being proposed and how will they be funded as well?
For the long term, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. I think sustainability, picking the right programs for future job growth and sustainability are going to be huge aspects of any kind of a feasibility study. Yeah. So before, I'm not going to go through this particular conclusion. I do have some next steps on a different sheet.
Can I just ask you a general question about 1960?
Yeah.
Because at that time, steel and, all the thriving union businesses were in full force and swing. And it just surprises me that they were looking for skilled versus just the generational, hey, my dad and grandfather worked there, now I'm going in.
Yeah.
That they had that problem, 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I did include in this, there are, behind the data points, there is a copy of some of our chamber board minutes that talk about the Manufacturers Council with some of those notes from the
I
first
remember
meeting.
Dave Purcell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. So again, it's not a new issue, it's not a new solution, it's just another reiteration. Hopefully, we can gain more momentum with it this time. So there are links in here that talk about programs in other regions. I'm happy to send a PDF so you don't have to search for those links if you would like it. There's links that talk about the facts that I have in here. For example, Lebanon County is the second fastest growing county in Pennsylvania. We have to take that into consideration. Definitely our population has been going up faster than the rest of the state. Again, I'm just looking at some of the data points that we have. Median household income, I mentioned, is slightly lower than the rest of the region. But if we have better pay opportunities, better job opportunities, then hopefully we can skew that a little bit. We definitely have a lot of households in Alice, and I think you're all familiar with Alice, the asset limited income constrained employed. So they're not in the poverty level, but they're not making enough to pay all their bills. So we need to be really conscious of that. I won't go through all of the data, but one of the other things that I thought was important was the talent pipeline and opportunities. That is here. So these are job titles that are strong in Lebanon County compared to Pennsylvania, and they are growing. And they include machine operator, maintenance technician, and information technology specialist. So I think that these are jobs that we could nurture and grow to go along with what the county is asking for from its employers. If you look at the bottom graph, this is one of the things that I think bothers me the most. And we had a workforce roundtable meeting this morning, and we talked about this, the opportunity that we have in that we have 40,000 people that live in Lebanon County but leave the area, leave the county to go to work. As compared to those who live in the county and work in the county, that's just under 25,000. We're losing valuable employees in this county to work elsewhere. So why are they leaving? Is it because they're professionals that don't have access to the right job opportunities? Or I'm not sure what other reasons there are, but that's a huge opportunity for us to try to encourage some of our population who's already here to fill some of the jobs that we have available in Lebanon County. So after the data points, there was a support letter from the the Lebanon County Career Technology Center, just to kind of show that they are definitely on board with this and think that it would be a great concept to continue to pursue. I did mention that I have those copies from the proposed Manufacturers Council as well, just for kind of fun to look back over their comments. And so I'm gonna, if you don't mind if I continue, I'm gonna get into kind of the nitty gritty of a few things here. And that's, I do have it on the screen. And that's just this document. This is kind of additional notes. So this is where we are. So I put this proposal together at the end of May, early June. Sent it off to some individuals to start that conversation. But this is where this is kind of the from there to now what we've been doing. So I've had conversations and meetings with HAC, with Lebanon Valley College, with Representative Frank Ryan, with Senator Chris Gephardt, with Congressman Dan Muser's representatives, especially the individual who's in charge of grants. SCPA Works, our South Central PA Workforce Development Board, the Career and Technology Center, Dr. Phil Domensic with Carmel Lebanon School District, Lesher Mac, Bear Healthcare, WellSpan Health, United Way, and the Community Health Council. So there's been a lot of conversations. I see all of these as individuals who may be part of that partnership in moving this forward. So the big question is, what are our funding options, right? Because this is a huge ask. So where do we get money for this? And frankly, I don't know if we have any magic bullet on this. I do think that it's going to require a lot of research and work to look for funding from a variety of sources. I can now add to the list, perhaps reviewing what, the Hershey.
My contacts are a little cold now.
Okay.
I know there's been changes, but I did have some I can do a little
I would appreciate any
research and
contacts
see.
that you have.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you. So in my conversations, there may be state funds available from the general budget or from loan and grant programs, community funded programs that are earmarked. We don't have any ask in at the moment, so I have no idea what the possibilities of that. I know that Senator Gephardt has submitted this in Harrisburg, but he's pretty fresh on the job, and it hasn't gone through any kind of working model yet. My discussion with Congressman Muser's representatives, there may be federal funds from loans and grant programs that may need a portion of matching funds. What I understood is that could be anywhere from 5 to 15% of anything that comes in federally. They provided me some details from USDA grant programs and EDA, and I have some excerpts from those. There's a lot of detail. I did include in your packet the USDA resource guide for rural workforce development. I don't feel like you have to read through the whole thing, but it is here. I have started to look through it and look for the opportunities that they have. Additionally, you have a sheet on the Youth Build program, which is through the EDA. There's also potentially money from the American Rescue Plan funds. There's an excerpt as to why it may be adequate to use for something like this, but there's some caveats with that, so I want to be really wary of that. And investments from regional employers. So that's what I have so far.
Did you say 5 to 15% is the match for federal?
That's what I heard.
It's pretty modest.
Yeah. So on the second sheet, I have items to consider with funding. This is again what I've learned in my conversations. Having partnerships is vital to having these grant applications go through. That includes regional school districts, post-secondary institutions, very specifically the County of Lebanon. Not a money ask, but this very specifically that there may be some grants that require the county to be the lead. So that's one thing that I would like to have in my kind of ask for consideration down the road, is that you think about that as a possibility. Minority organizations are very important. Our Hispanic business organization in the area, the newly formed NAACP for Lebanon County, etc. And then businesses that are large and small. Some of the other setbacks is that many grants will not fund construction, which is going to be our biggest cost. So that is definitely a roadblock that we have to try to work around. Our CAP funding may be an option, but that is very lengthy and tedious process.
Very competitive.
And very competitive, correct, yeah. So this is something that Muser's office noted. If American Rescue Plan funds are used from the county level, it may interfere with federal grants. And I put that in there because if we were discussing that, we need to be really careful how we proceed with that, because it may cut off other opportunities. It's considered federal money. So if you've applied for one, or if you have some from one, you may not be able to apply for others.
You know, it's amazing to me that we're so restricted on how, at least we're being told so far, that we can use that money, yet the school district can build a new building with it. Assuming they did all their homework, that
Yeah.
is not a question, but they're moving forward with that assumption. And why it would be so different for counties with the 911 center
I
or
know.
things like this, that it just seems like maybe all the school districts could take a chunk of that and do a plentiful job with the.
Yeah, I think you just hit on probably the formula that might flow through, and that is to ask each school district to include it in their budget and then apply for those grants and direct it to the building of that school.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to be a team effort for many areas. I don't think there's going to be one funding source or that any of it will be perfect. I think this is going to be a very long haul, but you don't get to the end if you don't start somewhere, right? So I'm going to come back to next steps in a moment, but you have in your packet excerpts from some of the resource guide that you have the full version of, and that states in terms of some of the things that we may have access to. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act of 2014 was a landmark legislation that's designed to strengthen and improve our nation's public workforce system and help get Americans, including youth and those with significant barriers to employment, into high-quality jobs and careers. So that may be an avenue for us to look for as a grant. Youth Build is another one. I gave you a single sheet on that because the Youth Build model wants occupational skills training, industry-recognized credentials in construction and other in-demand industries. This is just skimming the surface of what may be available, and we may actually be cut out of these. I have not looked at all of the criteria, but I think what I'm trying to say is that there are places for us to continue looking. If you look at the excerpt from the U.S. Economic Development Administration, through its competitive grant process, the EDA evaluates all project applications to determine the extent to which they effectively address the creation and or retention of high-quality jobs. So that's one of their priorities. Another portion of their priorities that are listed here, equality, or equity, sorry, economic development planning or implementation projects that advance equity across America through investments that directly benefit one or more traditionally underserved populations. We could definitely tie into something like that if we find that the data backs up our minority populations are held back. And then obviously workforce development is another one of their investment priority definitions. So that's where I think that the EDA and the USDA are potential funding sources through grants. Now going into the rescue plan fact sheet, again, you have the modified version, the shortened version, that's not the tone that you would have to read to understand it all. And out of that, we may be able to tie into that by looking at some of their, the things that they say that you can use it for, job training, rebuilding public sector capacity by rehiring public sector staff and replenishing unemployment, et cetera, et cetera. Recipients may also use this funding to build their internal capacity to successfully implement economic relief programs with investments in data analysis, targeted outreach, technology, infrastructure, and impact evaluations. So what that all means is, some of these may be a long shot, some of these may be possible. There's a ton of money available in workforce development projects. To find the right one is going to take some digging and some research. We might find that after looking at 15 opportunities, only 2 of them may apply based on what we're trying to accomplish. So that is definitely going to require some work. So here is the next steps in my mind. For the County of Lebanon to consider being a partner in grant requests. So think about the project. When we get more data and more opportunities, I would like to come back and say, all right, here's where we might be able to make that first step. So to consider being a part of that. Have funding for a feasibility study as needs and actual build and development costs are critical to moving forward. We can't apply for a grant if we don't know what we need and how to prove the need. So that is definitely something that is lacking at the moment.
Is there a number for that?
No, I think what I would need to do is put that out for bid, but I would like some advice from others who ask for feasibility studies as to what I want them to provide. But I would think, what I was looking at online, I mean, it can be anything as low as 25,000, but definitely could go up to 50 or 75,000, depending on the complexity of the job. Additional research and data collection, working with SCPA Works to do some job projections for the area. That also would come in through the feasibility study. If we get closer to the idea of moving this along, I think we should do some tours of other training facilities, training centers in our eastern region. So that would mean taking some trips, talking to them about their programs, what's working, how did they start up, what were the obstacles that they faced, how can we learn from their bumps in the road. To continue to get letters of support from regional educators, employers, and community groups, to research grant opportunities, and to continue conversations with key partners. And that's kind of where I am. And I think I bring this to you because I want you to be aware of where it is right now. And think about opportunities that you may be aware of, for example, Hershey, that we can pursue to get more information, and or any other grant opportunities that you think we should look into, or anything. I mean, I think I'm kind of standing alone on this at the moment. If you have any guidance or suggestions, I would love to continue to move this forward in some manner, to either rule out that it's feasible or to rule in that we can make it happen.
Jamie?
You mentioned touring other facilities. Did you stumble across others? Is there something that fits this concept already in existence that wasn't an add-on to a CTC or anything?
There are. I'd have to look at a map and see how close some of them are. There's one in North Carolina that hasn't been built yet. They are in the process of requesting funds for it. So I talked to them for a little bit. But there are others that have been built. A number of the ones that I came across were built as part of the community college. So the community college is the one who was running it and facilitating it. But I think I would do some more digging and then find what might be available in a 2 or 3 hour drive.
Okay, so when you said the southeast, you weren't referring to...
No, I said that, did I say the southeast? I meant the east.
Or east, you weren't referring to
Northeast
like...
or east coast, yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm not.
You're not like, oh,
Unless you want to go to-
Delaware County or something. You're talking about, yeah.
Well, I think
The
if we
Atlantic
can
coast.
find what we need in a drivable distance, then you start out small, and if you still don't have enough answers, then you go further.
Are there any others in Pennsylvania that you're aware of?
I believe there are, again, I'm gonna have to do a little more digging on
The facility that is out near the landfill, the Carpenter School, I
Mhm.
think is, are they
Carpenter's
pretty?
local.
Yeah, are they pretty, so that's related to a union?
That's-
Yeah,
that's union run.
I had forgotten, okay, I'd
Yeah.
forgotten that, I was,
You know,
okay.
that's an outstanding facility.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there were any opportunities there, but I had forgotten, it's, okay. Yeah, forgot that part.
You know, with Heck being in whatever 5 counties, they'd be a great partner, because then you scale. I just think what you're looking at may be too small, rather than, something that is not feasible because it's too expensive or too big. I think you're not thinking big enough,
Okay.
perhaps. With the challenges of finding skilled employment, employees, and staying, current with what the needs are out there from the business community, so, yeah. And I'd love to have it here and let Hack bow to us for, instead of us trying to fit in with Hack, let
Yeah.
them send everybody that needs this kind of, have a reason to come to Lebanon.
Right.
Because the existing campus is shrinking, as you're aware.
For,
Well, they're
Right,
going-
yeah.
yeah, for heck, yes.
Yeah, and so that's going to be vital to keeping their presence here, I would think. And they want to stay here in some capacity.
Yeah.
This would be a great, to be unique to Hack by having in Lebanon County.
Absolutely.
So, very excited about
So this is where it stands. I have never gone through a process like this, so I will, certainly put it out there that any guidance and direction is welcome, and I'll just keep moving forward and looking for opportunities. So again, I brought it to you to make you aware of where it stands, and to just ask if you know of other things that we might be able to look into for funding or for understanding the needs better, or developing it in a different manner. The model is just what I think might work, but it might not be the way it looks in the end. I'm sure that there will be many reiterations of this down the road.
I think a really key partner is the CTC. I mean, they have to be, particularly, not only because that looks like a physical location that would make sense, but just so that there's dovetailing, and that there isn't a misimpression that this is instead of,
Right.
rather
Right,
than
right.
with.
Competitive or
Yeah.
something, yeah. It's going to
Yeah.
complement rather than compete.
Yeah, so I think they really have to be vocal that this is something that would be a plus
Right.
to what they're already doing.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I find frustrating, and I know our employers in the region can find frustrating as well, and it's no offense against the distribution centers and warehouses that are here, but they are definitely bringing in the requirement for a lot of employees that are starting at perhaps $15 an hour, and they're taking an employee base out of our workforce that potentially could be in better paying jobs. Again, I have nothing against what they're doing, but I feel like we are attracting more and more and more of them. If you have hundreds of jobs starting at 15, as opposed to 50 jobs starting at 20 or 25 or $30 an hour, you're keeping our employee base down. So I would much rather start to change that trend of distribution centers and say, let's start bringing in IT companies and medical research companies or whatever else might fit the need for higher paying, more skilled jobs.
If you looked at it as a source of workforce in that region, that would be a big help to attracting those businesses.
Yeah. So are any other questions that you guys have?
I only have one, I'm sorry.
No.
If you come across the feasibility study, send it my way, because I think I can help with money for that.
Okay,
Because that's to me the first step.
that's the
of
first step,
How
right?
big is the need, and, all those kind of things.
Right. All of the other pieces can't really be answered or defined until you know what that is. Yeah. Thank you. I'll do a little research on that, maybe get some bids. Commissioner Ames, did you have something you wanted to
No.
add? No?
No.
There's contacts up there.
I know.
They're all dead.
Get the book.
Don't
That
say
is
that.
pretty cold. Those are
I
cold
said
days.
it's cold, but you know,
Didn't know that's what you meant.
All right. So that is it for me. I very much appreciate all your time today. I
You
hope
have
I didn't
another
take too
hour.
long. I have another hour? What do you want to talk about?
Well, thanks for doing the inaugural presentation on our,
I know.
on our
It's
AV.
Starting to feel a little fever.
It just acts like a
Being
computer.
in person, yes.
We haven't used it before.
Yeah.
It's great.
I do really appreciate listening in, and at any time, if you think of something, shoot me an email and say, hey, look over here. I will do my best to stay on top and push this wherever I can, and look for whatever resources I can to bring to the table, so. Okay? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for what you're doing.